Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about Marvel villains, and if you haven't noticed by now, there are tons of them. Now when it comes to the Marvel universe, I would say that they definitely have some of the best villains out there. Now with that said, there are some key points I want to get across regarding Marvel villains that I feel like aren't talked about enough. So let's jump into it. Number 1, they are more than just evil. Now this may seem obvious, but I think people forget that just because someone is a villain does not mean that they are inherently evil. In fact, most Marvel villains have very understandable motivations for doing what they do. A good example of this is Magneto. He was born with the ability to control magnetism. But sadly, he also happened to be Jewish during World War II, and as such, he ended up in one of Germany's infamous work camps. Magneto watched as his people were rounded up and sent off to concentration camps where they'd likely die. Even worse, he watched as his parents were taken away from him and murdered. Now, after escaping the camp, Magneto dedicated his life to helping fellow mutants live peaceful lives, believing that humans were inherently dangerous. However, when he saw just how much hatred humans had for mutants, he became incredibly angry. Instead of fighting for peaceful coexistence, Magneto started fighting for mutant superiority. This was due to the trauma he experienced as a child. Basically, the reason why Magneto becomes a villain is because he had every right to be upset at humans. Another great example is Loki. Loki's story has been told many times, but here's the gist of it. Loki was the god of mischief in Norse mythology. However, when he was born, an oracle said that he would end up killing his father, Odin. To prevent this from happening, Odin banished Loki. Years later, Loki returned to Asgard and tricked his way into becoming a member of the royal court. He remained there for years, causing mischief whenever he could. However, Loki never really felt like he belonged in Asgard. He was constantly reminded that he was not a true god and that he had no place in Asgard. His adoptive brother Thor was a shining example of everything Loki wasn't. He was strong, respected, and loved by all. As a result, Loki's jealousy grew until he caused the death of Balder, Thor's brother. This was Loki's most infamous villainous act, and it's what he's mostly known for. But Loki was really just trying to find his place in the world. Sadly, he never got that opportunity. Now, Thanos is probably Marvel's most famous villain, so you might be wondering why I'm including him on this list. Well, Thanos is actually a prime example of a villain who isn't evil. Thanos believed that the universe was out of balance and that the only way to restore balance was to wipe out half of all life. He came up with a plan to court death personified and become her consort. It was actually a pretty sweet plan, if you ask me. Unfortunately, he went about it in a terrible way. Thanos went ahead and built the Infinity Gauntlet, which allowed him to manipulate reality on a whim. He then used the stones on the gauntlet to wipe out half of all life in the universe. Now, you may say that what Thanos did was wrong, but I'll argue that he was just trying to help. When the universe was in balance, the Mad Titan found peace and became Death's consort. Now, those are just 3 examples of Marvel villains with understandable motivations. There are plenty of others, and each one is more interesting than the last. The point is that just because someone commits villainous acts doesn't make them inherently evil. Now, that brings us into our next point. 2, villains often mirror heroes. A lot of the time, Marvel villains have similarities to their heroic counterparts. Some of these similarities are superficial, while others run deeper. Let's start with the superficial similarities. For example, both Spider-Man and Mysterio are known for their use of webs. Captain America and the Winter Soldier are both super soldiers who fight with a shield. Iron Man and War Machine are both armored superheroes who fight using long-range weapons. As you can see, some villains basically copy their heroic counterparts. However, some of the similarities between villains and heroes run much deeper. Both Daredevil and Bullseye are skilled fighters who rely on their senses and agility to take down their opponents. However, Daredevil uses his abilities to help people, while Bullseye uses his abilities to kill people. Basically, villains are like dark reflections of heroes. Take, for example, Wolverine and Sabretooth. Both are incredibly similar, but one is a hero and the other is a villain. Both have animalistic fighting styles, enhanced strength, speed, senses, and healing factors. However, Wolverine generally fights to protect the innocent, while Sabretooth delights in spreading pain and destruction. Then there's Ghost Rider and Blackout. Both can transform into demonic beings that punish evildoers. Both ride motorcycles and wear iconic leather outfits. However, Ghost Rider is a hero who fights to avenge the innocent, while Blackout is a villain who feeds off the darkness within people. The point is that most Marvel villains are simply twisted versions of the heroes we love. This makes for interesting character studies because it allows us to explore what would happen if a hero gave into their darker impulses. 3. Some villains are treated better than heroes. Now, this is a bit of a controversial topic, but I think there's some truth to the statement. Some Marvel villains get more attention than heroes do. For example, Loki is arguably one of the most popular characters in the MCU despite being a villain. This is probably due to his charisma and complex motivations. Loki is a tragic figure who's constantly overlooked. He's intelligent and powerful, but he's also insecure and jealous. Sadly, Loki's story ended on a rather sour note in Avengers: Endgame. However, he will be returning in the upcoming Thor: Love and Thunder. Hopefully, his story will have a happier ending this time around. On the other hand, we have lesser-known heroes like Moon Knight. Moon Knight is actually quite an interesting character. He has multiple personalities, and all of them believe they're the avatar of an Egyptian god. Despite this, Moon Knight has never really been given the spotlight. Sure, he's been featured in a few crossover events, but he's never been a member of the Avengers or any other major team. That finally changes with the upcoming Disney Plus series Moon Knight. The series is set to explore the character's fractured psyche, and it will introduce several new characters to the MCU. Basically, some heroes get left in the shadows while villains like Loki get all the attention. It sucks, but it's the reality of the situation. Thankfully, it seems like Marvel is trying to change this. Moon Knight is just one example of a hero who's finally getting the spotlight. Only time will tell if this trend continues. Those are 3 key points I want to get across regarding Marvel villains. Now, obviously, this is just my opinion. I'm sure there are plenty of other things that could have been included. So I want to ask you, what do you think? What are some interesting facts about Marvel villains? Let me know in the comments below. Now, before we go, I want to give a big shout out to our supporters. Thank you so much for supporting us. It means a lot. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want to see more videos like this, hit that subscribe button. And if you really want to support us, check out our support page. With that said, I've been your host. And until next time, peace out.